Jimin almost left without saying goodbye after a long workout, but Jungkook pulled his wrist and whispered, "Don't leave me like this." After a brutal workout, Jimin tries to leave without goodbye until Jungkook pulls him back and whispers words that change everything. "Don't leave me like this." The words were barely a breath against his skin, but they struck harder than the burn in his lungs, harder than the ache in his trembling muscles. Jimin froze. The dance studio still pulsed with the echo of bass that had stopped minutes ago. Sweat clung to the air, metallic and sharp, mixing with the faint scent of rubber mats and the citrus cleaner the staff used every night. The mirrors were fogged from hours of practice, turning their reflections into ghosts, two silhouettes caught in a moment that felt too fragile to survive daylight. Jimin's hand was already on the door handle. He had planned it perfectly, finish the last run-through, laugh when the choreographer praised them, grab his hoodie, leave before anyone noticed the way his smile faltered when Jungkook avoided his eyes. But Jungkook had noticed. His fingers circled Jimin's wrist, not tight, not forceful, just enough to stop him, warm, shaking. "Don't leave me like this," Jungkook whispered again, his voice rough from hours of singing and something else, something unguarded. Jimin didn't turn around immediately. He stared at their reflection instead. Jungkook stood close, chest rising fast, dark hair plastered to his forehead, eyes searching. There was no stage persona there, no golden confidence, just a man who looked like he was seconds away from losing something he didn't know how to name. "Like what?" Jimin asked softly. "Like this, the silence, the distance, the almost goodbye." Jungkook swallowed, "Like you're already gone." The words slipped under Jimin's ribs and lodged there. He turned. Up close, Jungkook looked exhausted, not just physically. The faint crease between his brows had deepened over the past few weeks. He'd been staying later than anyone else, practicing until his knuckles split from hitting the floor too hard during choreo drops. He laughed loudly during interviews, but afterward, he sat in the van staring out the window as if the city lights were codes he couldn't decipher. "You're overthinking," Jimin said, though his voice lacked conviction. He was the one overthinking. He always had been. Ever since the tour announcement, ever since the rumors about solo projects began circulating like wildfire online, ever since management started pulling them into separate meetings. Jimin had always feared abandonment, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that made headlines, the quiet kind, the gradual drifting, the moment when you realized someone had built a new world and you were no longer part of it. Jungkook's grip loosened but didn't let go. "You've been avoiding me." Jimin laughed lightly, a reflex. "We've been practicing 12 hours a day." "That's not what I mean." The studio lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a door shut. The building was emptying. Jimin's heart pounded for reasons that had nothing to do with cardio. He hated confrontations, hated peeling back the careful layers he'd built. His habit, when hurt, was simple: smile brighter, practice harder, leave first. "I just thought you needed space," he said finally. Jungkook blinked. "From you?" The disbelief in his tone was almost boyish. Jimin looked away. The mirror reflected too much. "You're preparing for your solo stage. You've been focused. I didn't want to distract you." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You think you're a distraction?" The question carried weight, accusation, fear. Jimin shrugged, but his shoulders felt like stone. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like you're running ahead, and I'm just trying to keep up." There it was, the truth cracked open. Jungkook released his wrist only to step closer, closing the space Jimin had been trying to create for weeks. "I'm running because I'm scared," he admitted, voice low. "Not away from you, towards something. I don't even know what yet." Jimin searched his face. "You're not scared." "I am." It came out sharper than expected. Jungkook exhaled slowly, hands falling to his sides. "I'm scared of failing alone. I'm scared that if I try something by myself and it's not good enough, I won't have you there to laugh it off with me. I'm scared that you'll think I don't need you anymore." The confessions settled between them like dust after a storm. Jimin hadn't known. He'd interpreted Jungkook's late nights as independence, his closed-off moods as detachment, but maybe they were just different expressions of the same anxiety. "You've been different," Jimin murmured. "So have you." That was true. Jimin had been quieter, more critical of himself. He started counting mistakes instead of moments. Every misstep felt like proof that he was slipping behind. His fear wasn't that Jungkook would leave physically. It was that one day, when the lights dimmed and the crowd's roar faded, Jungkook would realize he could shine brighter without him. And Jimin would smile and say he was proud, even if it broke him. The memory of their early trainee days flickered in his mind. Late-night ramen, shared headphones, whispered promises that they'd stand on the biggest stage together. Back then, the world had been small, manageable. It was just them against uncertainty. Now the world was vast, glittering, hungry. "I thought if I pulled back first," Jimin said slowly, "it would hurt less." Jungkook's breath caught, "Hurt less? If you didn't need me as much anymore." Silence stretched. Then Jungkook did something unexpected. He laughed, but it was shaky, disbelieving. "You're unbelievable." Jimin frowned. "That's not." "You think I don't need you?" Jungkook stepped closer again, forcing Jimin to meet his eyes. "You think all those years meant I'd just outgrow you?" Jimin's throat tightened. Jungkook's voice softened. "You're the first person I look for after every performance. The first person I want feedback from. When I mess up, I check your face to see if it's okay. When something good happens, I want to tell you before anyone else." His fingers brushed Jimin's wrist again, gentler this time. "And you were just going to walk out without saying anything." Jimin hadn't realized tears had gathered until one slipped free. He wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. Crying was supposed to be private, controlled. "I didn't want to be dramatic," he whispered. "You don't have to be dramatic, just be honest." Honesty felt more terrifying than any stage. Jimin inhaled deeply, tasting sweat and faint citrus. "I'm afraid of being left behind," he said. "Not just by you, by time, by expectations. I keep thinking if I'm not perfect, I'll become replaceable." Jungkook's expression shifted, anger melting into something raw and protective. "You could never be replaceable." "That's easy to say." "Then I'll keep saying it." The firmness in his tone made Jimin's chest ache in a different way. They stood there, the tension no longer sharp, but heavy with vulnerability. The mirrors no longer felt like judges, just witnesses. "You know what scares me the most?" Jungkook continued quietly. "That one day we'll stop talking about these things, that we'll pretend everything's fine until it's not, and then it'll actually be too late." Jimin let that sink in. He'd always thought strength meant enduring silently, but maybe real strength was this, standing in the messy middle of fear and refusing to step away. "I don't want to drift," Jimin admitted. "Then don't." A simple answer, infuriatingly simple. Jungkook reached up and gently tugged Jimin's hoodie sleeve down, a small habit from years ago when Jimin would fidget with fabric when anxious. "Stay, talk to me, even if it's ugly." Jimin huffed a weak laugh. "It might be very ugly. I've seen you after 3 hours of sleep and no makeup. I can handle ugly." That earned a real smile. The studio felt warmer now, less suffocating. Outside, rain had begun tapping softly against the windows, blurring the city lights into watercolor streaks. Jimin leaned back against the mirrored wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the cool wooden floor. Jungkook followed without hesitation, their shoulders brushing. For a while, they just breathed. "I don't want to lose what we have," Jimin said eventually. "We won't," Jungkook replied, "but we might have to let it change." Change, the word no longer felt like a threat, more like a doorway. Jimin nodded slowly, "Then promise me something." "Anything." "If you ever feel like you're running too far ahead, don't assume I can't catch up. And if I start pulling away, don't let me." Jungkook looked at him with that steady, unwavering gaze. I just did. A quiet laugh slipped between them. The rain intensified, drumming against the glass. The city outside kept moving, indifferent to the fragile reconciliation unfolding inside the studio. Schedules would continue, solo stages would happen, headlines would speculate. The future remained uncertain, complex, demanding. But in that moment, the fear that had been gnawing at Jimin's chest loosened its grip. He hadn't been left. And he hadn't left either. Jungkook bumped his shoulder lightly. You were really just going to disappear without saying goodbye. Jimin winced playfully. I was going to text. That's worse. They sat in companionable silence again, the earlier tension now transformed into something steadier, not a fairy tale resolution, not a promise that insecurity would never return, but an understanding that when it did, they would face it together. After a while, Jungkook stood and offered his hand. Come on, he said. Let's grab food. You always get existential when you're hungry. Jimin accepted the hand, letting himself be pulled up. That's not scientifically proven. It is in my experience. As they turned off the studio lights and stepped into the hallway, Jimin glanced back once, not out of regret, but out of recognition. The room had witnessed something important, a near miss, a choice. The door clicked shut behind them. They walked side by side down the empty corridor, shoulders brushing occasionally, neither pulling away. And this time, Jimin didn't try to leave first. The first punch landed before either of them saw it coming. It wasn't physical, it was a headline. Global star Jungkook confirms solo world tour will begin without group members. Jimin stared at the screen in the van, the glow of his phone painting his face in cold blue light. The rain from earlier had turned into a storm, streaking violently across the windows as traffic crawled through Seoul's midnight chaos. Across from him, Jungkook went still. I didn't confirm that, Jungkook muttered, his jaw tightening. The manager in the front seat exhaled sharply. It's already trending. The article quotes an anonymous insider. Jimin didn't look up. His thumb scrolled automatically, eyes scanning comment after comment. He's moving on. He doesn't need them anymore. Jimin always held him back. That last one lodged like glass under skin. Jungkook leaned forward. Hyung, look at me. Jimin locked his phone and slipped it into his pocket. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's fine, rumors happen. Don't, Jungkook snapped. The sharpness in his voice startled everyone in the van. Don't do that thing where you pretend it doesn't get to you. Jimin's composure cracked for half a second. I'm not pretending. Then why won't you look at me? The van felt too small, too tight, the air heavy with unsaid things. Because, Jimin shot back quietly, I don't know if I should be congratulating you or bracing myself. Jungkook's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. You think I'd announce something like that without telling you? I don't know anymore, Jimin replied, and the honesty in his voice cut deeper than accusation. The manager cleared his throat awkwardly. We'll handle the media. Both of you stay off social platforms tonight. Neither of them responded. When they reached the dorm, the silence between them was volatile, not empty, charged. The door shut behind them with a heavy thud. You really believe I'd leave like that? Jungkook demanded as soon as they were alone in the living room. Jimin dropped his bag on the couch. It wouldn't be the first time plans changed overnight. That's not the same. It feels the same. Jungkook ran a hand through his damp hair, packing. I've been fighting for months to make sure any solo project doesn't interfere with us. Have you? Jimin asked, the question softer but more dangerous than yelling. Jungkook stopped. What is that supposed to mean? It means I've been watching you pull away. Longer practices, private calls, closed doors. That's called preparation. It feels like separation. The word hung between them. Jungkook stepped closer, eyes blazing. You think I want to separate from you. I think you're ambitious, Jimin said, voice trembling despite his effort to steady it. And I think ambition doesn't always wait for anyone. A bitter laugh escaped Jungkook, so now I'm selfish. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Jimin's chest rose sharply. Why are you so defensive if it's not true? Because you're acting like I've already betrayed you. The volume of Jungkook's voice filled the room, echoing against the walls. For a split second, neither moved. Jimin had always hated loud arguments. They reminded him of childhood nights spent listening to doors slam and apologies whispered too late. His instinct was to shrink, to retreat. But he didn't. Then tell me the truth, Jimin said, stepping forward until they were only inches apart. Are you planning something you haven't told me? Jungkook's breathing slowed. His anger didn't disappear, it condensed. There is an offer, he admitted quietly. The confession felt like a second punch. Jimin's stomach dropped, and I haven't accepted it. But you're thinking about it. Yes. The honesty was brutal. It's a world tour, Jungkook continued, words measured now. 6 months, maybe more. 6 months, Jimin repeated faintly. It would start before our group comeback. There it was, the fracture line. Jimin turned away, walking toward the kitchen as if distance could stabilize him. So the headline isn't entirely wrong. I didn't confirm it. But you didn't deny it either. Jungkook followed him because I don't know what to do. That vulnerability pierced through the anger again. You could have told me, Jimin whispered. I was going to. When, after contracts were signed. Jungkook slammed his hand lightly against the counter in frustration. I wanted to be sure before dragging you into my confusion. I was already in it, Jimin snapped, eyes shining. Do you think I wouldn't feel the shift, the tension? I'm not stupid, Jungkook. I know you're not. Then stop protecting me like I'll break. The accusation stunned them both. Jungkook blinked. Is that what you think I'm doing? You tiptoe around me when you're stressed. You smile too much. You avoid saying what you really want because you're scared I'll be hurt. Jungkook's voice dropped. Wouldn't you be? Yes, Jimin admitted immediately, but I'd rather be hurt by the truth than destroyed by silence. The room went quiet, except for the storm outside. Jungkook's shoulders sagged slightly. I want to take the tour. The words were steady this time, certain. Jimin felt the impact fully now. No speculation, no rumor, just reality. And what does that mean for us? Jimin asked. It means I grow. And if we grow in different directions, then we learn how to bend, Jungkook replied, frustration bleeding into desperation. Why does growth automatically mean loss to you? Jimin opened his mouth, then closed it. Because it always had. Every change in his life had come with subtraction, friends who drifted, opportunities that demanded sacrifice, love that required distance. I don't know how to not lose people, he said finally, voice breaking. Jungkook's anger dissolved. He stepped closer again, slower this time. You're not losing me. It won't be the same. Of course it won't, Jungkook said, almost gently. We're not the same boys who shared one bedroom and instant noodles at 2 a.m. The memory softened the sharp edges of the argument. But different doesn't mean worse, Jungkook continued. It could mean stronger. Jimin searched his face, looking for hesitation, for signs of doubt. What if you succeed, Jimin asked quietly, and realize you don't need this anymore? Jungkook let out a disbelieving breath. You still don't get it. Then explain it to me. Jungkook closed the distance completely, his voice low but fierce. There is no version of my success that doesn't include you, not because of contracts, not because of obligation, because you are woven into it. Every stage I've stood on, every high note I've hit, every risk I've taken, you were there. His hand hovered near Jimin's chest, but didn't touch. You're part of the reason I'm brave enough to even consider this. Emotions surged through Jimin, confusion, pride, fear all tangled together. Then why does it feel like you're already halfway out the door? Jimin whispered. Because I'm terrified, Jungkook replied, and when I'm scared I move, I don't stay still. Jimin let that sink in. He withdrew when afraid. Jungkook accelerated. Two opposite instincts colliding. A notification buzzed on Jungkook's phone. He ignored it. You deserve to chase what you want. Jimin said slowly, I just don't want to become something you look back on nostalgically. Jungkook's expression hardened, not with anger but conviction. You're not my past, you're my present. Silence again, but different now. Heavy, yes, but clearer. The storm outside began to ease, rain softening against the windows. So what happens now? Jimin asked. I meet with the company tomorrow, Jungkook said, and I tell them I'll only accept if the timeline doesn't sabotage our comeback. And if they refuse? Jungkook hesitated. That's the controversial part, he admitted. Jimin's pulse quickened. What are you thinking? I walk. The word dropped like a bomb. You reject it. If it costs us, Jungkook said without hesitation. Jimin stared at him. That's insane. Maybe. You've dreamed about a solo world tour for years. And I've dreamed about standing on stage with you for longer. The sincerity in his tone left no room for doubt. Emotions swelled in Jimin's chest until it felt unbearable. He stepped forward impulsively, grabbing Jungkook's shirt as if anchoring himself. Don't make sacrifices, you'll resent later, Jimin warned. I won't survive being the reason you gave up something that big. You're not a burden, Jungkook said fiercely. Stop deciding what I'll regret. Their foreheads nearly touched now, breaths mingling, tension no longer hostile but electric. I hate that this scares me, Jimin confessed. I hate that you think I'd leave without fighting for us, Jungkook shot back. They stood there, locked in the heat of honesty. Finally, Jimin's grip loosened. Take the meeting, he said quietly. Negotiate, fight for both, and if you can't have both. He inhaled deeply. Choose what makes you proud when you look in the mirror. Jungkook's eyes softened, and if that choice hurts. Then we deal with the hurt, Jimin replied, together, not by pretending it doesn't exist. The tension between them shifted again, not resolved, but transformed into something braver. Jungkook reached up this time and actually touched Jimin's chest, palm flat over his racing heart. I'm not leaving you, he said firmly. Jimin placed his own hand over Jungkook's. Then stop acting like you're already alone. A faint smile tugged at Jungkook's lips despite everything. You're really bad at dramatic exits. And you're worse at secrets. A quiet laugh broke through, fragile but real. Outside, the storm had fully passed. The city lights reflected clearly now on the wet streets below. The future remained uncertain. Contracts, negotiations, headlines, they would come. Arguments might come again. Fear would return in different forms. But this time, there were no unsaid words festering in silence. Jimin didn't try to walk away. And Jungkook didn't let him feel left behind. The door to the conference room closed with a soft click that sounded louder than a gunshot. Jimin felt it in his spine. The company building had always smelled the same, polished marble, expensive coffee, something sterile and calculated beneath it all. The walls were lined with framed achievements, platinum records reflecting the overhead lights like quiet witnesses. Across the long glass table sat 3 executives and a legal advisor, their expressions professionally neutral. Jungkook sat straight-backed beside Jimin, jaw set, fingers laced tightly together as if bracing for impact. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, the senior director began smoothly. A solo world tour of this scale elevates not just you, but the entire brand. Jimin hated the word brand. Jungkook's voice was calm but firm. I'm aware. Then you understand why timing is critical. The venues are secured, sponsors are aligned. Delaying for a group comeback would cause complications. Complications, Jimin repeated quietly, unable to stop himself. The director's gaze flicked toward him briefly before returning to Jungkook, financially and strategically. Jungkook inhaled slowly. The group comeback isn't optional. It's flexible. No, Jungkook said, and the temperature in the room dropped. It is. Silence stretched. Jimin watched Jungkook carefully. He knew that look, the one that appeared right before he did something bold, reckless even. The legal advisor leaned forward. We need clarity today. If you accept, rehearsals begin immediately. If you decline, we move to alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements. Jimin felt the words like a threat, wrapped in velvet. What kind of alternative arrangements? He asked before Jungkook could respond. The director folded his hands. We pivot, perhaps prioritize other members for global visibility. It wasn't subtle. Jimin's stomach twisted, so that was the pressure point, divide and redirect. Jungkook's voice sharpened. You're trying to leverage us against each other. We are maximizing potential. No, Jungkook replied, you're testing loyalty. The director's polite smile thinned. Loyalty, he echoed, this is business. And we're people, Jimin said quietly. The executive's gaze landed on him fully now. With respect, your emotional dynamic should not interfere with strategic growth. Emotional dynamic. As if years of shared sacrifice could be reduced to a weakness. Jungkook leaned forward. Here's my condition. The tour starts 3 months after the group comeback promotions conclude, non-negotiable. That delay risks momentum, the director countered. It protects unity, Jungkook shot back. And if we refuse, the legal advisor asked. Jimin's pulse roared in his ears. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Then I refuse. The word landed like a detonation. Jimin's head snapped toward him. He hadn't expected him to say it so plainly, so fearlessly. The room went cold. You would walk away from a global solo tour, the director asked slowly. Yes. The answer came without tremor. The director leaned back, studying him. You understand the implications, contracts, media narrative, investor confidence. I do. And you're prepared for backlash. Jungkook's jaw flexed. I'm prepared to live with my choices. A heavy silence followed. Jimin's heart pounded, not just with anxiety, but with something dangerously close to awe. The director exchanged a glance with the others. We'll need to reassess. That's fine, Jungkook replied. So will I. The meeting ended not with agreement, but with tension thick enough to taste. When they stepped into the hallway, Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm. What the hell was that? He hissed. Jungkook exhaled sharply. Clarity. You just risked everything. I know. Do you, Jimin demanded. Do you understand what they can do? They can freeze projects, delay releases, twist headlines. Jungkook's eyes flashed. And what would you have preferred? That I nod and let them push us apart quietly? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Jimin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm saying I don't want you to burn bridges because of me. It's not because of you. Then why does it feel like it is? They stood in the middle of the corridor, staff members carefully pretending not to listen as they passed. Because you think you're the reason I'm drawing boundaries, Jungkook said, voice tight. You're not, I am. Jimin's chest tightened. You could have negotiated softer. I've tried soft, Jungkook snapped. Soft gets delayed, soft gets reinterpreted, soft gets ignored. The intensity in his voice stunned Jimin. You've been carrying this alone, Jimin realized. Yes, Jungkook admitted, anger morphing into exhaustion. Because every time I try to talk about ambition, you look like I'm already leaving. The truth struck deep. I don't mean to, Jimin whispered. I know, but it makes me feel like wanting more is betrayal. Jimin's breath hitched. It's not betrayal, it's just terrifying. Jungkook's shoulders slumped slightly. It's terrifying for me too. They stared at each other, the fight losing its sharp edges. Before Jimin could respond, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He checked it, and the blood drained from his face. What? Jungkook demanded. Jimin turned the screen toward him. A leaked internal memo. Solo tour proceeds. Group ACTIVITIES to BRESTIUCTUID. And below it, a fabricated quote attributed to Jungkook. I can't keep limiting myself for others. Jungkook went completely still. I never said that, he breathed. I know. Within seconds, Jungkook's phone began vibrating non-stop. Messages, notifications, calls. The narrative was spreading like wildfire. Fans were already dividing into sides. Selfish. Held back. Ungrateful. Sacrificed. Jimin felt nausea rise in his throat. They're doing this on purpose, Jungkook said, voice dangerously calm. To pressure you, Jimin finished. A call from the director flashed across Jungkook's screen. He answered immediately, putting it on speaker. This is reckless, Jungkook said before the man could speak. You leak misinformation to manipulate public sentiment. We did not authorize any leak, the director replied smoothly. That quote is fabricated. We'll release a clarification. When, Jimin interjected sharply, after the damage is done. A pause. Emotions are running high, the director said, which is precisely why decisive action is necessary. You're weaponizing the fans, Jungkook said, fury breaking through, against us. No one is being weaponized. Then shut it down, Jungkook demanded, now. Another pause, longer this time. We'll consider the timeline adjustment, the director said finally, but you will need to publicly express commitment to both projects. Jimin let out a bitter laugh. You create the fire, then ask him to prove loyalty while it burns. This conversation is over, Jungkook said coldly, ending the call. Silence filled the corridor. Jimin looked at him carefully. This is going to get uglier. I know. You can still accept, Jimin said quietly, control the narrative. And validate their tactic, Jungkook shot back, no. The firmness in his tone left no room for doubt. For a moment, Jimin felt guilt twist in his chest. If you hadn't pushed back for the group comeback. Jungkook grabbed his shoulders. Stop. Jimin froze. This is not your fault, Jungkook said intensely. They would have tested limits eventually. I just forced it into the open. The chaos online was escalating by the second. I should say something, Jungkook murmured. Not reactive, Jimin cautioned. Strategic. Jungkook looked at him, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. See, this is why I need you. The confession hit differently now. Jimin steadied himself, then let's handle it together. They moved to a private rehearsal room, locking the door behind them. Jungkook paced while Jimin monitored trending topics. They're dissecting everything, Jimin said quietly. Old interviews, old glances, they're rewriting history. Jungkook stopped packing. Are you scared? Yes. Of me? No, Jimin replied instantly. Of losing control of something we can't fully control. Jungkook nodded slowly. Then we anchor what we can, he said. He sat down beside Jimin, shoulders touching. What do we say? Jungkook asked. The truth, Jimin replied, but carefully. Jungkook began typing. He didn't deny ambition, he didn't deny the tour, but he made one thing unmistakably clear: nothing he pursued would come at the expense of the group. There was no limitation, only evolution. Before posting, he looked at Jimin. Are you sure? Jimin held his gaze. I'm not afraid of your growth, I'm afraid of silence. Jungkook pressed publish. Within minutes, the online atmosphere shifted, not fully calm, but redirected. Jimin released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. You realize, he said softly, this just made you more controversial. Jungkook smirked faintly. I'd rather be controversial than divided. Emotions swelled in Jimin's chest again, pride tangled with fear. You're reckless, Jimin murmured. And you're cautious, Jungkook replied. Maybe that's why this works. They sat there, watching the digital storm slowly stabilize. After a while, Jungkook leaned back against the mirror. If they refuse the timeline adjustment, I'll still take the tour. Jimin blinked. You just said. I'll take it, Jungkook continued, but I'll restructure rehearsals myself. I'll fly back between legs if I have to. I won't let them box us into an either-or. That's insane, Jimin said again, but softer now. Probably. Exhausting. Definitely. Jimin studied him carefully. You do that. Yes. Why? Jungkook met his eyes steadily. Because I refuse to let ambition turn me into someone you don't recognize. The words settled deep. Jimin felt something inside him shift, not fear dissolving completely, but trust strengthening. You're not leaving, Jimin said quietly. No, Jungkook replied, I'm expanding. The distinction mattered. Jimin nodded slowly. Outside the rehearsal room, the company machine continued humming. Strategies, contracts, headlines, all in motion. Inside, two people sat shoulder to shoulder, bruised but unbroken. The conflict wasn't over. Negotiations would continue. Narratives would evolve. But this time, the tension between them wasn't a crack waiting to split. It was friction forging something stronger. The stage lights exploded on before the music did. For a split second, Jimin stood alone in blinding white, the roar of 20,000 fans swelling like a tidal wave ready to swallow him whole. Then the bass dropped. He moved on instinct, body slicing through choreography he had known for years, but tonight it felt different, charged, watched, analyzed. Every step carried the weight of headlines that hadn't died down. Backstage, Jungkook stood in the shadows, in-ear monitor dangling around his neck, eyes locked on the giant screen broadcasting Jimin's performance live. The crowd chanted Jimin's name, but woven between it were other chants too. Jungkook. Solo. Together. Separate. The division hadn't disappeared. It had just grown quieter, more strategic. Jungkook clenched his fists. 2 days after the meeting, the company had publicly clarified the tour timeline was under discussion. Translation, negotiations were ongoing and volatile. Behind closed doors, the pressure had intensified. Sponsors wanted certainty. Investors wanted momentum. The executives wanted obedience disguised as cooperation. And now, during a live award show viewed globally, the stakes were visible. Jimin finished his final spin, breath ragged, chest rising sharply as the lights dimmed to thunderous applause. He bowed. When he stepped off stage, sweat soaked through his shirt, makeup barely masking exhaustion, Jungkook was there. You were incredible, Jungkook said, voice low but steady. Jimin gave a tight smile. You're on in 3 minutes. I know. There was something in Jungkook's tone that made Jimin pause. What? Jimin asked. Jungkook hesitated. Then he said it. I'm going to say something tonight. Jimin's stomach dropped. Say something how? On stage. Jimin stared at him. About the tour. Yes. Jungkook. I'm tired of letting statements be filtered, Jungkook replied, jaw tightening. They want clarity, I'll give it. This isn't the time to improvise, Jimin warned. When is? Jungkook shot back, when the narrative's fully twisted. A stage manager rushed past them. 30 seconds. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm. Listen to me. If you say the wrong thing, they'll spin it again. So what? I keep smiling and pretending none of this is happening. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Jungkook demanded, heat rising in his voice. Jimin lowered his tone. I'm saying don't let anger make your choices. Jungkook's eyes softened slightly. It's not anger. Then what is it? Frustration, fear, the need to breathe without permission. The honesty disarmed Jimin. You don't need permission from me, Jimin said quietly. I know, Jungkook replied, but I need you not to look at me like I'm detonating something. The stage cue light flashed green. They're announcing you, Jimin said, heart pounding. Jungkook stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whatever I say, trust me. Before Jimin could respond, Jungkook was already moving toward the stage. The crowd erupted as soon as he appeared. Jimin stayed in the wings, pulse hammering, eyes glued to the screen. Jungkook performed flawlessly, vocals sharp, movements precise, charisma undeniable. The audience was his completely. When the final note faded, the applause was deafening. He stood there, chest rising and falling, sweat glinting under lights. Then he didn't leave. The crowd quieted gradually, sensing something unscripted. Jungkook lifted his mic again. I know there's been a lot of talk lately, he began. Backstage, managers stiffened. Jimin's breath caught. I've seen the headlines, Jungkook continued. I've read the opinions, some say I'm leaving, some say I'm being held back. The audience murmured. I'm not leaving, Jungkook said firmly, and I've never been held back. Jimin felt tears sting unexpectedly. My solo tour is something I've dreamed about, Jungkook went on, voice steady, but so is standing on stage with my members. Growth doesn't erase where you come from. Applause began building again. I don't believe in choosing between ambition and loyalty, he said. I believe in fighting for both. Backstage, a manager cursed under his breath. And if that makes things complicated, Jungkook added with a faint smirk. Then I guess we'll deal with complicated. The crowd roared. Jimin pressed a hand to his mouth, overwhelmed. Jungkook bowed deeply, then finally left the stage. The moment he stepped backstage, tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. What was that? The director hissed, approaching rapidly. Jungkook didn't flinch. Transparency. You were not authorized to address internal negotiations. I didn't mention negotiations. You implied instability. I clarified commitment. The director's face darkened. You've made this harder. For who? Jungkook asked calmly. The man didn't answer directly. We will discuss this tomorrow. He stormed off. Jimin stepped forward as soon as they were alone. You just ignited another fire, Jimin said, though his voice held awe rather than accusation. Did I say anything untrue? Jungkook asked. No. Then let it burn. Jimin let out a shaky laugh. You're insane. Probably. They moved to their dressing room, the adrenaline still coursing through them. As soon as the door shut, Jimin turned to him. You scared me, he admitted. I know. I thought you were going to drop a bomb. I did, Jungkook replied lightly. Jimin shook his head, packing. You have no concept of political subtlety. I'm not a politician. You're under contract. The reminder hung heavy. Jungkook's expression shifted. Do you regret backing me? The question pierced deeper than expected. Jimin stepped closer. No. Even if this complicates everything. Yes. Silence settled between them, thick with unspoken things. Why? Jungkook asked softly. Jimin hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I'd rather stand next to you in chaos than watch you suffocate quietly. The vulnerability in his tone made Jungkook's breath catch. A sudden knock on the door interrupted them. Jimin opened it to find a junior staff member, pale and anxious. "There's another issue," she said carefully. "A recording was leaked." Jungkook's stomach dropped. "What recording?" "An internal rehearsal argument." Jimin's blood ran cold. "What argument?" Jungkook demanded. The staff members swallowed. "From last week, you said, 'I won't sacrifice my future for comfort.'" Jimin remembered the moment instantly. It had been during a late rehearsal, tension high, both of them exhausted. "You're kidding," Jungkook muttered. "They cut it," the staff member continued. "Removed context. It's circulating with captions implying you meant the group." Jimin felt the room tilt. "This is sabotage," Jungkook said flatly. Online, the reaction was already erupting again. "Selfish. Confirmed. Ungrateful." Jimin's chest tightened painfully. "Release the full recording," he said immediately. The staff member hesitated. "Legal says that may escalate." "Release it," Jungkook repeated, sharper now. She nodded and left quickly. The door closed again. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jimin turned to Jungkook. "Did you mean it?" he asked quietly. Jungkook blinked. "Mean what?" "That you won't sacrifice your future for comfort." Jungkook held his gaze. "No. Not even a little." The air shifted. Jungkook inhaled slowly. "I meant I won't shrink myself to make situations easier, but that doesn't mean I'm abandoning anyone." Jimin searched his face for cracks. "You're allowed to want more," Jimin said, voice fragile but sincere. "I just need to know I'm not the comfort you're trying to escape." Jungkook stepped forward immediately, hands finding Jimin's shoulders. "You're not comfort," he said fiercely. "You're my grounding. There's a difference." The words hit deep. "I don't want to be your anchor if it drags you down," Jimin whispered. "You don't drag me down," Jungkook replied. "You steady me so I don't spin out." Emotion surged again, sharp and overwhelming. Outside, the noise of the arena still echoed faintly through walls. Inside, the real battle felt closer. "What if this keeps escalating?" Jimin asked. "Then we escalate too," Jungkook answered. "That's not strategy. It's honesty." Jimin let out a breathless laugh. "Despite everything, you really are impossible. And you overthink everything. Because someone has to." Their foreheads nearly touched again, tension no longer hostile, but electric with shared adrenaline. "We'll survive this," Jungkook said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because we're arguing face to face instead of through headlines." That struck something profound. The staff member returned, breathless. "The full recording is being posted now." They watched the screen together as the longer clip surfaced. In it, Jungkook's original sentence continued. "I won't sacrifice my future for comfort, but I won't build that future alone either." The missing half shifted everything. Within minutes, the narrative began fracturing again, this time in their favor. Jimin felt his shoulders finally drop a fraction. "You see," Jungkook murmured. "For now," Jimin cautioned. "For now is enough." The chaos hadn't ended. The company would push back. The media would keep dissecting. The tour negotiations remained unresolved. But something had changed. Jungkook hadn't detonated the bond between them. He had defended it publicly. Jimin looked at him differently now, not as someone sprinting ahead recklessly, but as someone willing to run through fire without letting go. "You're going to exhaust yourself," Jimin said softly. "Probably," Jungkook admitted. "Then don't shut me out when you do." "I won't." Outside, cheers swelled again for the next act. Inside the dressing room, the tension finally eased into something steadier. Not calm, not safe, but united. And this time, neither of them was trying to leave first. The call came at 2:17 a.m. Jimin knew it was bad before he even answered. Jungkook was still awake, sitting on the edge of his bed in the dark, phone in hand, scrolling through the aftermath of the leaked recording. The glow from the screen cut sharp angles across his face, hollowing his eyes. Jimin's phone vibrated against the nightstand like a warning. He answered immediately, "Hello." "It's happening faster than we anticipated," their manager said without preamble. His voice sounded older, strained. "The board is furious." Jimin sat up. "About the speech or the leak?" "Both, and the statement release. They think you two are undermining authority." Jimin glanced across the dim living room. Jungkook looked up, already reading his expression. "What does that mean?" Jimin asked quietly. "It means they're accelerating the tour announcement. Official confirmation tomorrow morning." The words slammed into him. "What?" Jungkook said sharply, hearing enough to understand. "They're forcing it," Jimin demanded into the phone. "Yes. And the timeline?" "Unchanged. It overlaps with group promotions." Jimin felt something inside him snap. "They said they'd reconsider." "They reconsidered," the manager replied bitterly. "They're calling your bluff." Jungkook stood, packing now, put it on speaker. Jimin did. "You think I won't walk?" Jungkook asked, voice dangerously calm. "I think they're betting you won't," the manager replied. Silence filled the apartment. Jimin felt anger surge hot and fast. "So they're trying to corner you publicly?" "Yes." Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. "They want me to choose on record." "That's exactly it," the manager confirmed. "If you decline after the official announcement, you'll look unstable. If you accept, the group schedule suffers." Jimin's chest tightened painfully. "This is manipulation," Jungkook muttered. "Yes," the manager said, "it is." After the call ended, the apartment felt suffocatingly quiet. Jungkook stopped packing and looked at Jimin. "They think I'm predictable." "You are," Jimin replied softly. Jungkook frowned. "Excuse me." "You always take responsibility, you absorb pressure, you protect everyone else. And they're using that." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So what do you suggest? I detonate everything, terminate contracts?" The word terminate lingered dangerously. Jimin stood, walking slowly toward him. "No." "Then what?" "You don't react tonight. They're announcing tomorrow." "And we respond tomorrow," Jimin said firmly. "With what?" "Another speech." "With strategy." Jungkook's frustration flared. "I'm tired of strategy." "And I'm tired of watching you fight alone," Jimin snapped back. The heat between them ignited instantly. "You think I enjoy this?" Jungkook demanded. "You think I want to be the center of this mess?" "No," Jimin shot back, "but you keep stepping into it without armor." "I don't need armor." "You do when they're aiming at you." Jungkook's breathing quickened. "I won't be bullied into shrinking." "I'm not asking you to shrink." "Then what are you asking?" he shouted. The volume echoed harshly against the walls. Jimin didn't flinch this time. "I'm asking you to let me stand in front sometimes." The words landed heavy. Jungkook blinked. "What?" "You always position yourself as the shield," Jimin continued, voice trembling but steady. "You draw fire, you make bold statements, you sacrifice sleep and sanity. You don't have to be the hero every time." Jungkook's anger faltered, replaced by something more fragile. "And you think I'm doing that now?" he asked quietly. "Yes." Silence. The city outside was eerily still at this hour, as if the world itself were holding its breath. "You'd take the hit?" Jungkook asked. "If it means you don't implode," Jimin replied. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustration morphing into exhaustion. "You don't deserve that." "It's not about deserving." "Then what is it about?" "Balance." The word lingered between them. Jungkook looked away, voice dropping. If I walk away from this tour, they'll label me difficult, unreliable. And if you accept, under pressure, they win. Yes. He exhaled sharply. Jimin stepped closer. What do you actually want? I want the tour, Jungkook admitted instantly. I want the stage, the challenge, the risk. And I don't want it to fracture us. Jimin nodded slowly. Then we separate the two. How? Jungkook demanded. You accept, Jimin said. Jungkook stared at him like he'd lost his mind. After everything. Yes. That contradicts. Listen to me, Jimin interrupted, voice firmer than before. You accept publicly, but you attach conditions. They'll reject them. Then they reject them on record, Jimin replied, not in shadows. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. You want to force transparency. Yes. A long pause followed. That's risky, Jungkook murmured. So is letting them dictate quietly. Jungkook studied him carefully, as if seeing something new. You've changed, he said. So have you. The tension between them shifted, not dissolving, but recalibrating. What if they call it insubordination? Jungkook asked. Then we deal with it together. And if they threaten penalties? Jimin's chest tightened, but he didn't look away. Then we calculate the cost. Jungkook stepped closer, searching his face. Why are you so calm? I'm not, Jimin admitted. I'm terrified. Of what? That this turns you into someone hardened, that you stop trusting anyone. Jungkook's voice softened. I still trust you. Then trust me now. The vulnerability in Jimin's tone disarmed the remaining anger. After a long moment, Jungkook nodded once. Okay. The decision felt seismic. The next morning arrived too quickly. At 9:00 a.m., the company released the official announcement. Global solo tour confirmed. Dates overlapping with group promotions. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Jungkook didn't move. Jimin sat beside him on the couch, their shoulders touching but hands clenched separately. Ready? Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook nodded. He went live. No dramatic lighting, no stage, just him sitting in their living room, raw and unfiltered. I saw the announcement, he began. The comments flooded instantly. You're surprised, someone wrote. Yes, Jungkook answered honestly. The timeline is still under discussion. Shock rippled through the live chat. I want this tour, he continued, but not at the expense of commitments we've already made. The phrasing was careful, precise. I've requested adjustments to ensure both can happen responsibly. If that can't be achieved, we'll find alternatives. Alternatives. Jimin watched the chat shift in real time, from confusion to intrigue. You're saying the company didn't confirm with you? A top comment asked. I'm saying negotiations are ongoing, Jungkook replied calmly. It was subtle but powerful. After the live ended, the phone started ringing almost immediately. The director's name flashed on the screen. Jungkook answered. You've escalated this publicly, the director said, barely containing irritation. No, Jungkook replied. I clarified. You implied internal conflict. There is internal conflict. A dangerous silence followed. You're forcing our hand, the director warned. And you tried to force mine, Jungkook shot back. Jimin watched, heart racing. This could damage long-term partnerships, the director continued. Then let's protect them properly, Jungkook replied. Adjust the schedule. You're not in a position to dictate terms. Jungkook's eyes flicked to Jimin briefly. Maybe not alone, he said quietly, but I'm not alone. The implication hung heavy. The call ended without resolution. Jimin let out a breath that was bold. Too bold, Jungkook asked. No, Jimin said after a pause. Necessary. An hour later, another shock hit. An article surfaced claiming internal division between members, specifically naming Jimin as opposing the tour. Jimin felt the sting instantly. They're trying to isolate you now, Jungkook said, fury rising again. Jimin's phone began vibrating with messages from friends, acquaintances, even distant relatives. Are you fighting? Did you block it? Are you okay? I didn't say anything, Jimin whispered. I know. Jungkook stood abruptly. I'll shut it down. No, Jimin said sharply. What? You don't fix this by speaking for me. Jungkook froze. I'll handle it, Jimin said. He opened his own live stream. Fans flooded in immediately. I support Jungkook's tour, Jimin said clearly. I'm proud of him. The simplicity of it cut through noise. But growth requires coordination, he added, and we're working through that. No blame, no denial, just unity. When he ended the stream, Jungkook was staring at him with something close to awe. You didn't have to do that, Jungkook said quietly. Yes, I did. You took heat for me. Jimin shrugged lightly, though his hands were still shaking. Balance. Jungkook stepped forward, pulling him into a tight embrace without hesitation. For a moment, the chaos outside the apartment didn't exist. I don't want this to turn us into opponents, Jungkook murmured against his shoulder. It won't, Jimin replied, unless we let it. They pulled back slightly, foreheads almost touching again. You're stronger than you think, Jungkook said softly. And you're more reckless than you realize, Jimin replied with a faint smile. A notification buzzed again. This time it was different. An updated company statement. Tour schedule revised. Group comeback confirmed first. Solo tour to follow with adjusted dates. Jungkook blinked. They folded, Jimin breathed. Not completely, not without tension, but enough. Jungkook let out a shaky laugh, relief flooding his features. You did that, he said. We did, Jimin corrected. The battle wasn't clean, it wasn't without scars. But they hadn't been cornered. They hadn't turned on each other. And for the first time since the chaos began, the silence between them felt steady instead of volatile. The future was still uncertain, the company dynamic had shifted, trust had been tested. But they were still standing side by side. Not because it was easy, but because they chose it. The first rehearsal after the schedule revision felt nothing like victory. The mirrored studio that had once held quiet confessions now buzzed with tension sharp enough to taste. Staff members moved cautiously, voices lowered, eyes flicking between Jimin and Jungkook as if expecting another explosion at any second. The comeback stage was in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to rebuild synchronization, stamina, trust, not just between them, but across the entire machine surrounding them. Music thundered through the speakers. Jungkook missed a step. It was minor, barely noticeable to anyone else. Jimin noticed. Again, they reset. From the top. The choreography was aggressive, full of sharp isolations and synchronized drops that required instinctive timing. Normally, they moved like extensions of each other. Tonight, they felt half a beat off, like two magnets repelling at the last second. Stop, the choreographer called out gently. Take 5. The room exhaled. Jungkook walked to the corner, grabbing a towel, wiping sweat from his neck. He didn't look at Jimin. Jimin felt irritation coil in his chest. He approached slowly. You're rushing the second sequence. I'm not, Jungkook replied without turning. You are. Jungkook faced him then, eyes flashing. Or maybe you're hesitating. The words struck harder than intended. I'm not hesitating, Jimin shot back. You are, Jungkook insisted. You're anticipating my timing instead of trusting it. Because your timing changed, Jimin snapped. A few staff members glanced over before quickly looking away. Jungkook stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not his intensity. You think I'm distracted? Aren't you? With what? The tour. The negotiations, everything. Jungkook's jaw tightened. I'm here, are I? Physically, Jimin replied before he could stop himself. The silence that followed was brutal. Jungkook's expression hardened. You don't get to question my commitment after everything. I'm not questioning commitment, Jimin said, heart pounding. I'm questioning focus. Same difference. No, it's not. Jungkook threw the towel onto a chair. You want honesty? Fine, I am distracted. Because every time I move, I feel like one wrong step will be dissected into proof that I care more about my solo than this. Jimin's anger faltered slightly. I'm carrying both in my head constantly, Jungkook continued, voice rising. So if I'm half a beat off, maybe it's because I'm exhausted from fighting on two fronts. The rawness in his tone drew blood from Jimin's frustration. You think I'm not exhausted? Jimin shot back anyway. I'm defending you publicly while trying to keep this comeback flawless. I'm fielding questions that imply we're fractured. Then say we're not, Jungkook snapped. I have. Then stop acting like we are. The words hit too close. Jimin stepped back as if physically struck. Across the room, the choreographer pretended to scroll through notes, giving them space. You're right, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook blinked. What? I've been bracing for impact, Jimin admitted. Even after the schedule changed, I keep waiting for the next bomb. Jungkook's shoulders dropped slightly. And that makes you pull back, Jungkook said. Yes. And that makes me push harder, he added. Yes. They stood there, breath heavy, eyes locked. This is exactly what they wanted, Jungkook muttered bitterly. To destabilize us, Jimin finished. A long silence followed. Then Jungkook did something unexpected. He stepped forward and grabbed Jimin's hand, not romantically, not gently, firm, grounding. Look at me, he said. Jimin did. I am not choosing one over the other, Jungkook said slowly, but I can't split myself perfectly in half either. I need you to meet me in the middle, not stand on the other side waiting to see if I fall. The words landed deep. Jimin swallowed. I don't want you to fall. Then stop assuming I will. The vulnerability beneath the frustration was unmistakable. Jimin's voice softened. I'm scared of being the one who slows you down. Jungkook's expression shifted from irritation to something almost pained. You don't slow me down, you force me to think. That's not always comfortable. I don't want comfortable, Jungkook replied instantly. I want real. The honesty silenced both of them. The choreographer clapped lightly, ready. Jungkook didn't break eye contact. One more thing. What? Jimin asked. If this comeback fails, Jungkook said quietly, it won't be because of my tour. And if the tour struggles, Jimin countered, it won't be because of the comeback. They held that understanding between them like a fragile treaty. Deal, Jungkook said. Deal. They returned to position. The music started again. This time, Jimin didn't anticipate. He trusted. When Jungkook hit the drop, Jimin matched it perfectly. Sharp, precise, unified. The staff's tension eased visibly. Hours later, rehearsal ended with applause from the team. But the piece didn't last long. As they were packing up, Jungkook's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened instantly. What now? Jimin asked. Jungkook turned the screen toward him. A viral clip. From tonight's rehearsal. Someone had filmed through the cracked studio door. The argument, the raised voices, the tension. Muted out of context, but explosive. "They're fighting again," the caption read. Jimin felt nausea creep up his throat. "This building is supposed to be secure," Jungkook said coldly. "Someone inside," Jimin whispered. Betrayal felt worse than public backlash. The comments were already spiraling. "See, it's fake unity. They're forcing it. The tour ruined everything." Jungkook's breathing grew shallow. "I'm going to find out who did this," he said, voice low and dangerous. "And then what?" Jimin asked sharply. Jungkook didn't answer. "That won't fix it," Jimin continued. "They violated our privacy." "Yes, but retaliating emotionally gives them more content." Jungkook clenched his jaw. "So we just accept it?" "No." "Then what?" Jimin's mind raced. Then something shifted. "What if we give them the full version?" he said slowly. Jungkook frowned. "Full version?" "Not the argument," Jimin clarified. "The rehearsal. You want to release practice footage?" "Yes." Jungkook stared at him. "That's risky." "So is letting them control the narrative." Jungkook hesitated, then nodded once. Within hours, an official behind-the-scenes rehearsal video was uploaded. It didn't hide the tension, it showed it. The argument was there, unedited, but so was the resolution, the handshake, the synchronized run-through afterward. Raw, human, honest. The reaction was immediate. Some praised the transparency. Others called it damage control. But one thing shifted, the narrative of fracture weakened. That night back at the apartment, exhaustion hit like a physical blow. Jimin sat on the floor, back against the couch, staring at nothing. Jungkook joined him quietly. "You okay?" Jungkook asked. Jimin let out a tired laugh. "Define okay." Silence stretched. "Do you ever wonder," Jimin began slowly, "what it would be like if we weren't constantly watched?" "All the time," Jungkook replied. "What do you think we'd argue about then?" Jungkook smirked faintly. "Probably dumb things, laundry, food." "Not ambition." "No," Jungkook said firmly. "Ambition wouldn't be a battlefield. It'd just be ambition." Jimin nodded. "I hate that our growth becomes public spectacle," he admitted. "I know." Another pause. "Are you angry at me?" Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook turned to him immediately. "No. Even when I doubt." "I'm frustrated," Jungkook admitted, "but not angry." Jimin looked at him carefully. "I don't want to be your obstacle." "You're not." "I don't want to compete with your dreams." "You're not," Jungkook repeated. The certainty in his tone made Jimin's chest tighten. "Then promise me something," Jimin said softly. "What?" "If the tour starts feeling bigger than us, tell me. Don't protect me from that truth." Jungkook considered that. "And you promise me something," he replied. "What?" "If you start feeling left behind, don't retreat into silence." Jimin hesitated only a second. "I promise." They sat there in the dim light, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. The comeback wasn't guaranteed success. The tour wasn't guaranteed triumph. The company wasn't guaranteed loyalty. But the choice to face it together, that was real. And this time, neither of them was pretending the fire wasn't hot. They were just learning how to stand in it without burning each other. The day of the comeback showcase arrived with a silence that felt unnatural. No scandals that morning, no trending leaks, no emergency calls from management. That quiet made Jimin more anxious than chaos ever had. Backstage, stylists adjusted collars and fixed microphones with trembling precision. The air smelled like hairspray and overheated lighting equipment. Monitors displayed the stage bathed in red, the audience already filling seats, buzzing with anticipation. Jungkook stood in front of the mirror, eyes distant. "You're too quiet," Jimin said softly from behind him. Jungkook met his reflection. "I'm thinking." That's never reassuring. A faint smile flickered, then disappeared. "I had a meeting this morning," Jungkook said. Jimin stiffened. "What meeting?" "With the board." Jimin's pulse spiked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it was scheduled last minute." "And?" Jungkook turned around fully. "They offered something new." The words felt dangerous. "What kind of something?" Jimin asked carefully. "They want to expand the tour." Jimin blinked. "It hasn't even started." "They want to add North America earlier, move some dates closer to the comeback promotions." "That contradicts the agreement," Jimin said sharply. "Yes." "Did you say yes?" "No." Relief came too fast. "But I didn't say no either," Jungkook added. The relief vanished. "Why?" Jimin demanded. "Because they framed it differently." "How?" "They said the demand is explosive right now, that momentum like this doesn't wait." "And you believe that?" Jimin asked, voice rising. "I believe momentum is real. And so is burnout." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You think I can't handle it?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you implied." Jimin exhaled sharply. "You just promised balance." "I'm trying to find it. By stretching yourself thinner." The tension began coiling again. Tighter than before. "They said if I don't capitalize now," Jungkook continued, "the window might close." "And what does that even mean?" Jimin shot back. "You think your relevance expires in months." "It's not about relevance," Jungkook said, frustration flashing. "It's about scale." "Scale at what cost?" "Why does every expansion sound like betrayal when it comes from me?" Jungkook snapped. "Because it keeps happening at the edge of our schedule," Jimin fired back. Voices outside the dressing room quieted. People were listening again. Jungkook stepped closer. "Say it." "Say what?" "That you think I care more about the tour than this." Jimin's silence answered too loudly. Jungkook laughed bitterly. "Unbelievable." "I didn't say it." "You didn't have to." Jimin's chest burned. Every time they push the tour closer, it feels like the comeback becomes secondary. "It's not secondary." "Then why does it keep moving around your solo calendar?" "Because I'm trying to make both work." The argument grew sharper, faster. "You're addicted to the challenge," Jimin said suddenly. Jungkook froze. "Excuse me." "You thrive on chaos," Jimin continued, words spilling now. "On proving yourself under pressure, on doing what people say is impossible. And that's a flaw. It becomes one when you can't step back." Jungkook's eyes darkened. "You think I'm reckless." "I think you're pushing your limits without admitting it. And you think you know my limits better than I do. I think you ignore them." The door swung open abruptly. The manager stepped inside, face pale. "You're on in 5. Neither moved. 5, he repeated. The door shut again. Silence exploded in its wake. Jungkook's voice dropped low. "You're projecting." Jimin blinked. "What?" "You're scared I'll outgrow this." The accusation sliced clean. "That's not fair," Jimin whispered. "Isn't it? You think I'm that insecure." "I think you're terrified of being left behind." The truth hit like ice water. Jimin's throat tightened. "I'm terrified of losing what we built." "Those aren't the same thing," Jungkook said. "Sometimes they are." Jungkook stepped even closer, their breaths nearly colliding. "You want honesty?" he asked. "Yes. I want the expanded tour." The confession was sharp and unapologetic. Jimin's vision blurred for half a second. Even if it overlaps again, he asked quietly. I'll manage it. That's not the question. Jungkook hesitated. Yes, he said finally, even if it overlaps. The room felt smaller. And what happens when you can't be fully present? Jimin asked. When rehearsals suffer, when exhaustion shows on stage. I push through. That's not sustainable. It's my choice. The words felt like a wall slamming down. Jimin's voice shook. And where do I fit into that choice? You fit everywhere, Jungkook replied immediately. Then why does it feel like I'm negotiating for space? Jungkook's frustration flared again, because you keep framing this as me leaving. I'm framing it as you accelerating. And you're afraid you can't keep up. The words were cruel. They hung between them, poisonous. Jimin went still. You think I can't keep up? He asked, voice dangerously quiet. Jungkook realized too late what he'd said. That's not. Say it, Jimin insisted. I meant you're afraid, Jungkook corrected quickly. Of what? Being slower, being less ambitious. No. Then what? Jungkook's voice cracked slightly, of not being enough. The honesty disarmed everything. Jimin's anger faltered, replaced by something raw. You think I feel not enough? He asked softly. I know you do, Jungkook said. You overtrain, you overanalyze, you apologize for things no one noticed. The mirror reflected them, two exhausted men on the brink of something irreversible. And you think adding more pressure fixes that? Jimin whispered. I think succeeding together fixes it. But this expansion isn't together, Jimin said. Jungkook inhaled sharply. You're right, he admitted. The admission shifted the air. I want it, Jungkook continued, voice steadier now, not because I want to escape, not because I want distance, because I want to test myself. And if testing yourself fractures us, Jimin asked, then we repair it. You say that like it's simple. It's not, Jungkook replied, but neither is shrinking. A stage cue light flashed under the door. 3 minutes. Jimin's heart pounded. You can't announce anything tonight, he said firmly. I won't, Jungkook replied. Promise. I promise. They held eye contact. After the showcase, Jungkook added quietly, we decide, not the board, not the headlines. Together, Jimin asked. Together. The agreement felt fragile but real. They stepped onto the stage minutes later, lights exploding around them. The crowd's roar drowned out everything else. For those 4 minutes of performance, they were flawless. Precision, power, unity. No hesitation, no half-beats. When the final pose hit, the audience erupted. Backstage afterward, adrenaline surged through their veins. Reporters waited in the press room. Questions flew immediately. Is the tour expanding? Are there internal conflicts? Did recent leaks reflect real tension? Jungkook glanced at Jimin before answering. We argue, Jungkook said calmly into the microphones. That's normal. A ripple moved through the room. But argument doesn't equal fracture, Jimin added. It means we care enough to fight for balance. Is the tour expanding? Another reporter pressed. Jungkook held steady. No decisions have been finalized. Truthful, careful. After the press conference, they returned to the dressing room in silence. The performance high began to fade, leaving raw nerves exposed again. So, Jimin said quietly, expanded tour. Jungkook leaned against the wall, eyes closed. I want it. Jimin nodded slowly, then we design it. What? We design it, Jimin repeated. If you're going to stretch the schedule, then I go with you on certain legs, not to perform, to stay aligned. Jungkook's eyes snapped open. You do that. I don't want distance to become assumption. That's not your responsibility. It's not about responsibility, Jimin replied. It's about presence. Emotion flickered across Jungkook's face. You'd sacrifice rest, he said. You'd sacrifice rest, Jimin countered. A tense pause. You really think we can handle that? Jungkook asked. I think we can handle hard, Jimin said. We just can't handle silence. Jungkook let out a slow breath. You're insane, he murmured. So are you. A faint smile broke through. Then Jungkook stepped forward, pulling Jimin into a tight embrace, tension dissolving into something steadier. I don't want success that isolates me, Jungkook whispered. Then don't build it that way, Jimin replied. The decision wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple. The expansion would be negotiated carefully, intentionally. But this time, it wasn't reactive. It was chosen. And as they stood there in the aftermath of applause and argument, the fire between them no longer felt like something tearing them apart. It felt like something forging them into something stronger than either ambition or fear alone. The first night of the solo tour arrived quieter than anyone expected. No scandal trended that morning, no anonymous insider posts, no emergency meetings, just a steady, electric anticipation that vibrated through the stadium walls like a living pulse. Jimin stood in the darkened wings, far from the spotlight, hoodie pulled low over his hair. He wasn't scheduled to appear, he wasn't part of the set list. He was simply there, present, just as he had promised. Out on stage, Jungkook stood alone beneath a single white beam. 70,000 voices roared his name. For a second, he closed his eyes. The scale was bigger than anything he'd carried before. The stage stretched endlessly, screens towered above him, broadcasting every breath, every blink. This was the expansion, the risk, the thing he had wanted so fiercely it had nearly torn everything apart. The music began. He moved like fire. Every note was controlled, every step deliberate, but beneath it all pulsed something new, not desperation to prove himself, not defiance toward anyone doubting him. It was grounded, anchored. Backstage, Jimin felt it. Not distance. Not separation. Expansion. Midway through the set, as the crowd's roar softened into a sea of light sticks swaying like stars, Jungkook stepped forward, chest rising with exertion. There were moments, he said into the mic, voice steady but raw, when I thought wanting something bigger meant risking something precious. The stadium quieted. I was wrong. Jimin's breath caught. Growth isn't about leaving people behind, Jungkook continued. It's about carrying what matters with you. He didn't say names. He didn't need to. Backstage, Jimin felt tears sting his eyes, but this time they weren't born from fear. They were born from recognition. After the encore, after the final bow, after fireworks dissolved into smoke above the stadium, Jungkook didn't go straight to interviews. He ran. Through corridors, past stunned staff, still breathless from the stage. He found Jimin in the shadows near the loading dock, away from cameras. For a second, they just looked at each other. You were unbelievable, Jimin said softly. Jungkook shook his head slightly. It felt different. Different how? Like I wasn't trying to outrun anything. Silence settled between them, not tense, not fragile, solid. Jimin stepped closer. Do you regret it? The expansion, Jungkook asked. Yes. Jungkook considered that honestly. No, he said, but I would have regretted losing you over it. The words didn't feel dramatic anymore, they felt earned. Jimin let out a slow breath. You didn't lose me. I almost did, Jungkook admitted. Not almost, Jimin corrected gently. We just had to learn how to argue without walking away. A faint laugh escaped Jungkook. You really were going to leave that night, he said quietly, recalling the studio weeks ago. I was, Jimin admitted. And now? Jimin looked at the massive stadium behind him, lights dimming, crew dismantling the spectacle piece by piece. Now I know staying doesn't mean standing still. Jungkook stepped closer, voice lower, and leaving doesn't mean abandoning. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the remnants of the night fade. The comeback had been a success. The tour had expanded, carefully, strategically, by mutual design. There were still negotiations, still exhaustion, still moments when ambition pressed too hard against emotion. But something fundamental had shifted. They no longer treated growth like a threat. They treated it like terrain to cross together. "You're going to be even bigger after this," Jimin said quietly. Jungkook glanced at him. "We are." Jimin didn't argue this time. He simply nodded. A cool night breeze swept through the open dock doors, carrying the distant echo of fans still chanting outside the stadium gates. Jungkook turned fully toward him. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me build a future that didn't include you." Jimin's eyes softened. "Thank you for not asking me to shrink so you could." The honesty between them no longer burned. It steadied. Somewhere in the distance, a staff member called Jungkook's name, reminding him of post-show obligations, press, the machinery that never truly stopped. He didn't move immediately. Instead, he held Jimin's gaze for one long, grounded second. "Ready for the next city?" Jungkook asked. Jimin smirked faintly. "Don't leave me like this." The words carried a different weight now, less fear, more promise. Jungkook extended his hand. This time, Jimin took it without hesitation. Not because he was afraid of being left behind, but because he understood that walking forward didn't mean walking alone. And together, they stepped out of the shadows, into a future neither of them had to choose between.